Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those people wanting to learn more about financial wellness, and we're going to look at different life cycles. We're going to break them down both emotionally and financially because we make our decisions from an emotional standpoint, especially when we're going through a stressful situation. But in addition, the more information, the better decisions we can make. We're going to be fairly general in our discussion, so we'd love to hear from you, make it more relevant. You can reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial, or post your comments on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere else that you might be listening to us. Quick disclaimer, we are speaking about divorce today, so it is going to be check your kind of local rules. Different states have different rules, but we're also going to be including the military, which has their own potential set of rules. We'll learn more about that. So divorce does have many considerations. I think one of the big ones on everybody's mind is always retirement. And we need to just be concerned about our retirement. Obviously, do we have enough? We need to navigate some of the confusing aspects of this. And we're very lucky to have David Smith joining us to help us navigate. David get all of this, by the way, because all of them are important. He's a CDFA, Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, Chartered Financial Consultant. He's a divorce financial planner, a quadro specialist, which is huge when it comes to the qualified retirement accounts. And thank you for your service, David. He's a retired lieutenant colonel, which is not shabby at all. Very high up there, and appreciate that. It's a pleasure having you on the show, David. We're going to have you on more, but
oh, thank you, Hirsch. I appreciate the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you and provide some information for your listeners around military divorce. It's got a few nuances here or there.
Yes, it does. It does. Yeah. You know, one of the things we were speaking a couple months ago at that conference for all the certified divorce financial analysts, and you had shared a little bit of your story, not a whole lot. I think a lot of the practitioners there, or the newer practitioners there, a lot of them came through a divorce, which is obviously one thing. You've been through the military, which is key in the subject, obviously understanding that mindset, because I think it is different. Tell us your story. Tell us a little bit about your background, the passion that kind of drives why you do what you do.
Sure. Yeah. There's definitely a tie between dentistry and the military and where I am now. There's no doubt about it. When I was looking to start dental school, the college I was in actually had was related to, I had an Air Force ROTC detachment. So I was able to actually get a scholarship to go to dental school. And so when I got that, and of course I got into school, that also meant that I had a commitment to the military, and which I loved. Got to live in 6 different places around the world. It was fantastic. And the whole time I was in the military, I had a lot of financial conversations with people. People would just come and ask me questions, and I liked, trying to help them answer those. And I got some designations and stuff while I was in the military. Then when I retired from the Air Force, and of course I practiced as a dentist my whole military career. Then when I retired in 2002, I was living in Panama City, Florida. And so I actually worked with the Florida prison system for a couple of years, but then I switched over and got into finance. So around what brought me, though, about divorce was actually what happened, and my interest in divorce came about my own family. There were a lot of experiences and situations. Excuse me, grab a drink of water here. A lot of situations with my own family. My parents married young. They divorced each other, remarried each other, divorced again. My mom married and divorced 2 times. My younger sister married, divorced 2 times. I was actually married a few weeks before I started dental school, and 2 years later, I was divorced. So there were lots of divorces going on that I was being exposed to. And around 2015, when I was in Panama City and I was already doing some financial work after the military, I found out Panama City was like one of the highest divorce rates in Florida and also maybe even in the United States. So I said, what can I do about this? I've got military experience, I have financial experience, and I hear about all these people going through this process. There's got to be a kinder, gentler way of doing this. And so I found out about the IDFA, the Institute for Divorce Financial Analysts. That's the conference, of course, we were at, and the CDFA designation. And I said, oh my gosh, I got to do this. I have to do this. And so I did. I dove in. And so I've been doing the military and divorce work for probably about the last 10 years.
So so many things obviously just coming together, which are huge. And you know this from your family, from yourself. The resources available today, or even in the last just 5 to 10 years, are so significantly more than they were prior, right? People don't always know that. They should, research them, look at that, speak to someone like David. You don't have to be in the military, by the way, to speak to David either. He does other pieces. As I said, he does financial planning. He works with divorce. He works, obviously, in the retirement space on both of those. So all big things. And talking about retirement in general, I think we were talking about this earlier. Verbiage is kind of thrown around, right? It's almost interchangeably. And you really do need to be a little bit more specific when it comes to divorce, because there are different ways things are treated. So people look at retirement accounts and they lump pensions and IRAs and 401ks and everything's kind of put in one or in the same category, so to speak. That's not the case when you look at a divorce and how they handle. So give us a little bit of a definition on what is a pension, and then we'll talk a little bit also about 401ks, IRAs, things like that. But let's start on the pension level and see, a little bit of a working definition.
Right. Yeah, sure. Basically, what a pension is it's a series of guaranteed payments coming from some source, somewhere, and they're guaranteed for a person's lifetime or for a period of time. Like Social Security is a great example of a pension, because we've worked, we put a certain amount of time in. Social Security looks at the money we've earned, our compensation, and at a certain age, we can receive a certain benefit that's guaranteed for as long as we live. And there also can be survivor benefits, et cetera, and former spouse benefits that are related to Social Security and divorce. So when you look at pensions, again, that's in essence what it is. If you look at a person's where they're working, or the employer or a company that might offer a pension, defined benefit is what it's called, where they work a certain period of time, they look back at their work record, a certain number of years of their work record, and there's a factor that goes into a calculation to say, if you decide to take your pension at a certain age or a point in time, retire, et cetera, then this is how much you can project it to receive for as long as you live. So that's basically what a pension is, a guaranteed stream of payments.
And it's important to understand that, because there are different tiers. Sometimes, again, I'm being very general also, there could be different tiers. For example, the longer you work, the higher the percentages that you might be paid out of your earnings that play in. And so understanding with any investment that you're going to get involved in, you should really understand. But these are crucial in retirement planning and other pieces to it. All right, so that's a general pension. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the qualified ones, the 401ks, 403b, things like that. And IRAs are different in the divorce world, so to speak, even though it's a retirement account. Touch a little bit on that, if you would.
Sure. Yeah, 401ks, 403bs, and defined benefit pensions, they're similar in that these are sponsored through an employer. Right. Okay. So the participation in those plans come from being employed at a particular business that offers those types of accounts. Now, IRAs or individual retirement accounts, those are, as the name says, individual accounts that people have opened on their own. They've gone out to a bank or credit union, a large mutual fund company, financial services company, and they open those. And so there's some similarities there, but there's some differences, because the 403bs and the 401ks, for example, I'll just use those. Those are called defined contribution plans. And what those mean is the actual amount of money that can go into those accounts is governed or directed, limited by the IRS. And in a defined contribution plan, the employee is actually the one that's selecting the investments, and therefore they're the one that are taking the risk to that investment. Ultimately, what is the balance of the account there is going to be.
And they're often defining also how much is being contributed. They might get a match, but they are the ones defining how much is going in often as well.
Exactly. Yeah. The plan is going to have rules as to how much can go in, how much the IRS could say how much can the employee actually contribute, for example. But in a defined benefit plan, such as a military pension, there are no specific investments for the person to actually invest in. So that payout, again, is typically fixed, for a period of time. And generally, I'll say that there's limited. I started to say there was no risk. That's not exactly true. There could be a risk if the company fails that they won't get their payment. But it's different between the defined benefit and the defined contribution plans. As who's at risk, how does the money get in there, who's responsible for picking investments, that sort of thing.
Right. And I'm going to do a little quick summary when you're talking about that non-contributory or that defined benefit. It's based on a formula. Usually it's tenure, a percent of what you earned, etc. And there's a formula in how it comes together. You don't necessarily put a dime into that. Usually you don't. It's based on that formula versus these other ones, the 401ks, the 403bs, your retirement account from an individual retirement account.
Right.
All of these are how much am I putting in? How much is that growing? You could put the same amount in, different investments and end up with different amounts. So really it's you contributing, and then we've got a plan around how much are you contributing, how much have you been earning, how long do you have. There's so many more factors that are, so to speak, out of your control as to how much you'll have at the end. And so those are important differences to
right.
I also want to just say, I like the way you put it with employer, because all of these that we're talking about, you might be thinking out there if you're listening, well, does my employer, I'm at a nonprofit, I'm at, a government agency, I'm at, all of these are employers, right? It's just
yeah.
of whether it's a corporation, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a government entity, these are all employers. They may have a 401k versus a 403b, but they have some kind of ability usually to be able to contribute. And if they don't, that's the beauty of the retirement, the individual retirement account, is being able to take.
And they actually, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. I mean, people, I would imagine most folks know this, but in case they're not aware, they have the employer plan and they also have the IRA. In other words, they can do both. They're not mutually exclusive, is my point. And you were exactly right in saying that the defined benefit is formula based. Same thing with the military pension. It's formula based. You reach a certain period of time in your military career, you've had your compensation, your base pay, what you've been being paid. There's a factor that goes into that to calculate, how much you're actually going to receive based on your rank, your number of years of service, and so forth. So, yeah, it's all formula based.
And whether it's a pension through the military or whether through a different pension, but the key also, if you are interested, you can contact your administrator and you can say, I'd like to see my statement of benefits. They usually send them out every year, or you might have to go into a portal to draw it yourself. But that information should be available on an annual basis at a minimum. And it is important because, are you going to put in 15 years, 20 years, 30 years? They all make differences in what you're going to get paid out. I was talking a little bit earlier about tiered. Well, the military is a perfect example there because your rank might play in as well. Obviously, with rank comes higher pay. So these are all pieces that play in. It can be confusing. That's why we have David on the show as a resource. But these are things that you should be thinking about. Whether you're getting divorced or not, by the way, you should be kind of checking on these things anyway, time to time. They are important.
Yeah, I would make one other quick suggestion. When someone comes to work at an employer, they're just getting hit with all sorts of stuff. Things are coming at them fast. They got HR, all these signing up for benefits, all these things that they have to do within a certain period of time. At some point, if I would recommend when it kind of calms down a little bit, actually for those that have a plan, like a defined benefit plan, for example, request from your HR department, your personnel department, what's called a summary plan description, SPD, acronym for that. And it will go through and say, this is how your plan works. It'll have the calculations in there of how your pension, would ultimately be calculated. So when you know what you can do, what parts you can control, how you can positively impact it, then that's just good information to have.
Yeah. And, something else that I think is important that goes along with this, as you transition in a career, whether you're going into the military, whether you're coming out of the military into kind of civilian life, whatever it might be, understanding your paycheck, understanding the benefits, understanding enrollments, all these kind of things are important. For example, healthcare, you generally only get to, once a year kind of thing at open enrollment. When you get hired, you might have the opportunity then, and then go into your open enrollment, but you don't want to miss certain deadlines either. And those become important. We both work with a lot of people going through divorce. I would get people entering the workforce after 15 years, and they'd be like, how do I do a W-4? Like that, telling payroll your situation. Yeah. How do I sign up for that? I actually created a course on people going back into the workforce for divorcees, but also kids or young adults graduating college, going in for the first time to really understand, because, I'm going to make up a number, make it easy. If you're earning $50,000 in your first job coming out of college or re-entering the workforce, you're not getting $50,000. I hate to break that to you. You're getting $35,000 after the deductions and taxes and everything else that plays. Well, you've just lost $1,200 a month. How do you plan around that, right? You don't want to end up with debt, things like that. Right. So all of your benefits, I think, are very, very important to really understand and go from there. David, we've got to take a break in about 90 seconds. So tell everybody, how can they get in touch with you and learn more?
Sure. I apologize. I have my phone on mute here, but it's perfect timing for hopefully the message will come through. I can be reached a couple of different ways. On the screen there, you can see my email address, which is david@sandoak, just like sand like the beach, oak like the tree. sandoakdivorcesolutions.com is my email address. And you can see also my website there, sandoakdivorcesolutions.com. Same thing. Reach out on the website. There's actually a place that you can request some information if you'd like, or if you want to talk, there's a way to actually get on my calendar and we can schedule a time to talk a little bit more about your particular situation.
I encourage everybody to go. It's always nice to be able to access David's calendar. Without him, you don't have to go back and forth. There's a little bio on David. There's some other information, all good stuff, all worthy of looking at. I encourage you to go, and we will be back probably in about 45 seconds. Don't go anywhere.
See you in a minute.
Hello, and welcome back to the Financial Wellness Hour. We are on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. Our guest today is David Smith. I'm not going to run through all the credentials again, David. Divorce financial planner, CDFA, qualified quadro specialist. That's a very important one when we are talking retirement and military. And as I said earlier, thank you for the years of service as now a retired lieutenant colonel. One of the things I like to do as well is just recap some things. We covered a tremendous amount of small things. But before that, I've got a little personal interest story. I have to understand, how did you go from dentistry to finance?
How did I go from dentistry to finance? Yeah. I mentioned a little bit earlier that when I was in the military, actually, before I even came in the military, before I went to college, I had this inside, this, I don't know, this kind of burning desire. I feel like I'm a continual student. I'm always studying and trying to learn and keep up with things. But finance was just always, financial topics were always fascinating to me. So the military, of course, gave me this base. We talked about pensions before. I have a base to where I can have the second career now of moving into finance and helping people answer financial questions, whether it's divorce related or not. But so I just feel like the way things are changing all the time. Tax laws are changing. Obviously, we had a big one here recently. So it's just bringing things together. I love answering questions. I kind of love sort of detective work of figuring out how to put pieces of a puzzle together, looking at documents, reviewing things, pulling things together, and trying to give some folks advice or suggestions is what they should consider. So tying the dentistry to finance just seemed to be a natural transition for me. When I came out of the military, I had a friend of mine from church who actually was working with the local financial services office, and he was retiring. And I told him about my interest, and he said, "Why don't you come and interview here?" And I did, and I worked there for about 7 years or so, and then I switched over to an independent practice, and that's what I've been doing since about 2012.
Love it. And it's so nice to have that opportunity, obviously, because you're helping people through what's ranked usually as about the third or second most difficult event in their life. So I love when people are kind of being able to transition like that and help others. It's a beautiful thing. I do want to recap a couple of the things. I'm never going to get it all. We spoke about, well, obviously you gave your background, which was appreciated. We did speak about pensions and what exactly a pension is. We spoke about kind of those retirement accounts, the contributory versus the defined benefit. What are the differences? Very high level on some of the considerations or what might impact them. All very big pieces to your planning. And by the way, you do need to plan. I've had people come to me, at like 50, 55 and say, "Oh, I want to save for retirement. I want to really prepare." And I'm like, "How much do you have?" They're like, "Well, nothing really, but I'd like to retire in 12 years. And you're thinking you're going to save in 12 years to live for 20. Doesn't usually work that way. So the earlier you get to do this, obviously, the better it is. We are going to we touched on military, we touched on a lot of different things. We are going to dive a little bit more now, I think, in the second half into and military and how pensions play in and all of that, which is different. That's all I can tell you. David will tell you beyond that. We also spoke a little bit kind of about the thresholds. As David said, one of the good strategies is if you are at a company, as an example, you're putting in a 401k, depending on your income level, you do need to double check that. But many people miss the opportunity to put money into an IRA as well. And that's something to consider because it just catapults your retirement savings as well. And again, I didn't cover everything, but those are kind of some of the highlights I was able to scratch down as we went through. So the military, as we've kind of alluded to, now we're going to actually talk about it, I guess. It does have differences, when it comes to taxes, when it comes to pay, when it comes to, one's career through the military. You've got a home of residence that people really do need to understand. They've got spousal income. How does that play in? Can the spouse take your state of origin? There's a bunch of pieces that, play into this, and combat pay and everything else. So understanding that in itself is very important. And then, unfortunately, people do go through divorce, and the military, especially people in combat or difficult situations, can be stressful. So are military divorce really that much different than non-military divorce? So let's start on that kind of higher level.
Yeah, that's a I think absolutely yes. I mean, no doubt about it. And one of the things that I would certainly recommend, an initial step for anyone in the military that's thinking about getting divorced, is to take advantage of their on-base legal services. It's called the JAG, the Judge Advocate General, the JAG office, the attorneys on the base. They can't represent someone, in their divorce, but they can certainly give some basic, background information about a little bit about jurisdiction. You're talking about which courts, actually are going to govern, making the decisions and signing off on the documents. So when it comes to being, so that's a big first step, is consulting with an attorney, even a private practice attorney. That doesn't mean you have to retain them to represent you in your divorce, but get the information, as you mentioned, Hirsch, relative to the state, the jurisdiction, the area where this is going to be filed. So let's go into how our military divorce is different. I think it's for a number of reasons. You have active duty divorces. You have reserve component divorces, which the calculations are different in calculating the pension benefit and so forth. You have, and that also drives different times of when the service member is going to receive their retirement pay, depending on whether they're active duty or reservist. And so a lot of what I'm talking about, what I see that sometimes is a big issue, one of the big issues is the language in a couple's settlement agreement is sometimes insufficient to be able to actually tell someone that's going to create a document about dividing a pension, et cetera, or a plan administrator what to do with a defined contribution plan, how things are actually going to be handled. So the language in the settlement agreement is just key through this process. Right. So you've got different kinds of retirement. Again, different ways for service members to qualify, like reservists qualify under a points system. An active duty military service member will qualify under years of active duty. So there are federal rules in combination of state rules that drive what can and cannot be done, what can be ordered or not ordered in a military divorce. And I don't know if we'll have time today, but perhaps at another time, if we don't, we'll get into what some of those rules are. Certain benefits can be ordered divided by the state courts. Others have to be qualified under federal rules for former spouses to qualify to get them. There are several different kinds of military pay. It's not just one. And some of those are divisible in a divorce, and many of them are not. So there's a lot of background information needs to be gathered about what's divisible and or not.
So before we go into any detail like that, I just want to back up and have a little discussion with you. I say to my clients all the time, it sounds a little counterintuitive, but if you add the right professionals on your team, you're actually going to come out with less cost and a better result, more likely, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I'm going to throw out, and then more for discussion, but you need the right professional. Let's start with that as a given. So when it comes to picking your professional, it's so essential that they understand the military rules, especially, there's specialties within law, there's specialties within a CDFA, all the rest. You really do need somebody who understands the whole military process. That becomes essential. You don't want to, the first thing people do is lawyer up, right? Oh, you're going to lawyer up. What happens if your lawyer's never done a divorce for a military couple and they have absolutely no idea how pay, how pension, how any of this works, right? Give me your thoughts on some of that.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. A team, it's like, I'll just do a little sports analogy here.
Yeah.
If the football team, for example, whoever your favorite one is, doesn't have a great person in the back that's calling the plays and throwing the ball and all that sort of stuff and kind of leading the team, quarterbacking it literally, the team might not have as much success. So, but think about, it's not just the quarterback. You have every other position on that team. They're good at what they're doing, whether it's blocking, whether it's receiving, it's running, it's punting, you got special teams. You have all of these folks that have different strengths to put together a team. And it works exactly the same way in a divorce, where you have an attorney, a financial professional, a mental health professional, and deciding the process that a couple wants to go through. It's the team, but it's also the process. How much time, cost, how much control they want to have over the process.
Right.
All extremely important.
And I'm going to add to that. I think everything you said is spot on. This is coming back to some of your credentials, right? This is where the experience and understanding of how pay works, what can be split, that quadro specialty is enormous, because I actually have a case. Well, it's about a year old now. It's very interesting though. They thought they were divorced. They thought everything was split. They thought everything was in order, and the quadro was not right. It was done incorrectly. The administrator of the plan looked at it and went, "That's not right. We're not dispersing any funds." Well, now technically they divorced, but the split of assets hasn't happened. And now guess what? They're back with their lawyers and back in mediation because, well, the market went up and I don't want to give part of that growth and all the rest that comes in. And so having that understanding and having the specialty, the right specialties involved becomes so important in making it fluid.
Right. Yeah. I've had situations too where I've been called in on matters after the fact, after everything has been signed, and then I'm asked to create a document to do this certain thing, dividing, an account or something. And then I'm looking, I made reference to the settlement agreement before. I'm looking at it and I'm going, I'm not exactly sure what this document is directing me to do. There's some words that I probably would have wanted to include or have discussion about back when this process was going on. So the earlier that professionals can be brought into the process to help educate everyone that's in this, bring the same information to everybody so everybody knows. Of course, that kind of matters depending on who you're working with or who's your client. But I mean, in general, you want to educate folks. So bring someone in early. Yes, know your options. And when it comes to quadros, there's qualified domestic relations orders and those documents to split accounts. Try to have those done already at the same time the final judgment's going to the judge. In other words, have it ready to go, and it's not months and months and months before it actually gets done. I had one that it was decades later before it was addressed. So that took a little bit of time and some unwinding and conversations, but we got it fixed. We got it repaired and got it done.
And I just want to throw out as well, we've really, for the most part, been speaking about items and thoughts and processes leading up to divorce. One of the things I always suggest to people is you do need to think beyond the divorce as well. One example I mentioned earlier, what happens with the spouse. So my home of residency is Florida. I don't pay taxes. Well, we based somewhere else. We based in a state that might have income taxes. There's a rule called MISRA. It's an acronym. The spouse will basically take on the home base, if you can call it, the home of residence for the active duty person. Well, what happens after the divorce? Can they keep that? Like, these are all questions that you should be thinking about, and if you don't have somebody who's knowledgeable in the military arena, like David, I'm going to give you a big plug here because there's not many. How many good ones? I'll put it that way. A lot of people put themselves out. I can do military. I can do anything. They're not ones that have the depth of knowledge that you do. But those are all important things, because what happens when, a year later you're filing your taxes as the spouse and you do it completely wrong because you have no idea what you're doing. So.
Right. Yeah. I had a home of record where I was a place of entry, where my home of record, where I actually came into the military, which was or can be different than your state of residence where you're actually paying taxes or not. So yeah, there's a lots of different what ifs. What if we do it this way? What does that mean? Or if we file in this state, et cetera. But yeah, thinking about the consequences of the decisions during the divorce and having someone, obviously you and I both are CDFAs. So, we have the ability to be able to show folks what actually could happen if you make this decision, you choose A, B, C. What does it look like, your future financial life is going to be? Right. And so, yeah, the future is definitely important. What does it look like the day of divorce, 5 years later, 10 years down the road?
100%. David, I wish we could get into the rules and can you split everything. We just don't have time, but we're definitely having you back because these are all huge topics. I think we covered a lot of the good, these are the things you got to talk about. Now, next time we're going to dive in further and go from there.
Okay.
Again, before we wrap up, though, share again how people can get in touch with you.
Sure. Yeah. The easiest ways, again, email me. David at sand. Again, I'll say, I always do this. Sand like the beach, oak like the tree. And if you think about that, it's kind of like taking you in the process from a place where your footing is not real smooth and easy to walk through in sand to a place like the roots of an oak tree,
Like
where you're firmly rooted into your present and your future. So David at sandoakdivorcesolutions.com. Again, my website, same thing, sandoakdivorcesolutions.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to write in, ask me questions or whatever, schedule a time to talk. I do offer, currently, I'm offering complimentary, 30-minute phone consultation. So give me a call, we can chat.
I recommend they take advantage of it. This adds a complexity for sure when you're dealing with the military. It's hard enough going through a divorce. Let's get it right. You kind of only get one chance of doing it, right?
Yeah.
So let's get it right. And David is the resource. I've actually got a client I'm trying to get over to David right now. It's not something that I have an expertise in, and I'm not going to try to learn it on your dime. So it's who knows it. And thank you. I mean, there's a lot of topics there that you covered that just are very confusing to people. It's not their norm, and I'm glad. I like the way you put it. It was very easy to digest and roll with. So, David, thank you. And I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach out to me through my website. It's lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. I'd like to thank David. I'd like to thank CC Schatz behind the scenes, making it easy for David and I to talk and educate and learn. And so thank you, everybody, for joining us. Help us get the word out about David. And we look forward to having you back on his second show. We haven't scheduled that yet, but we will for sure, because there's a lot to do.
Thank you so much, Hirsch. I love being here. I appreciate you inviting me, and I look forward to it if we get to do this again, hopefully soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.